Good day, this is Lucas from Wilger Industries here, just going through the electronic flow monitoring system kit builder, which is available on the Wilger website in the download section. If you go to the electronic flow monitoring system, and it'll be an Excel sheet downloadable there. Simply enough, once you open the kit builder, it'll have an extraction page as well as a few tabs. The tabs, depending on your system, might show up a little different, but they'd be in the realm of having a product 1, product 2, product 3, parts list for central manifolds. That's if your implement has all of your manifold, your plumbing, your electronics all towards the center of it, all in one place. Or the parts list for the separate manifolds. That's if your separate manifolds are spread out across the implement with a fair bit of distance between. Simply enough, you can start through the instructions, again giving a detailed list of all the required information as well as how it determines your parts list. But then you'd go into the products. So in our example, we might be using a single product application. So one product being applied on an air drill, let's say 48 runs on 3 sections. So we'll start with plugging in a name. So we might just call it starter. For the product density, you'll notice there's 3 different options, just to give you 3 different choices for whatever information you have. So for our example, we have, we're applying 2800. So our specific gravity we will type in as 1.28. And you'll notice as soon as we plug that in, the rest of the columns for those options go red because they're not required any further. For the number of outlets, we will plug in the number of outlets total in the implement, applying that product. So in our case, 48 runs. So the number of sections in our case will be 3. So that's how many manifolds we physically have on the implement. For the outlet spacing, we have the choices for either centimeters or inches. We'll choose inches on 15-inch spacing. Once again, you'll notice as soon as we plug in 15-inch, that centimeter reds off. For the primary flow of the starter, we'd have a few options for plugging in required flow rate, either in US gallons per minute or liter per minute flow rate, or alternatively the gallons per acre and speed. In our case, gallons per acre is pretty commonly available, so we'll plug in 10 gallons an acre, and we might be planting at 5 miles an hour. So it calculates our specific flow rate required, including the density change based on the liquid. So we have our flow rate now. You'll notice as soon as the flow rate is entered, the rest of the columns will be red. For the outlet selection for that first product, we'd select the fitting type. With drop down, we'd select, maybe we'll use push and tube. We pick the orientation, whether it be straight or 90 degree. Elbow is what we'll choose. For outlet fitting size, these are the available sizes in that type of fitting. So for our push and tube, we'd be selecting a 1/4 inch OD, so outside diameter tube. And based on that, we have a part number for that outlet. The next option is a question of whether we need a metering orifice. So options being yes or no. You'd select yes if you need a metering orifice in your system to set the flow rate. You would only select no if you already have some means of metering the flow. Scroll down to the inlet selection for that product. A few different options, mainly hose barbs in different sizes. We'll select a 90 degree hose barb and let's say a 1-inch hose. So that would be our main feed into each of those manifolds, to which we have a part number now. There's also a question of whether the manifolds are center fed with a T. So it's either center fed with a manifold. That's if you usually have larger manifolds, or it might give you a little bit more leeway as far as how to feed your hose in. You can select that, or side fed manifold, or existing plumbing if you don't have any plumbing required. In our example, we'll do center fed manifold. There is an optional input for an alternate flow rate. For example, we'll say we'll do an alternate rate of 15 gallons at that same travel speed. All that does is gives us a little bit more flow just for our metering orifice selection. That's pretty all it. We'll come down to the implement layout by section for that product. So here you would differentiate how many runs are in each section. So in our case, we'd have 16 runs in the first, 16 runs in the second, and 16 runs on the third. At the bottom, you'll have a total number of outlets per product, and then some diagnostics just to verify. So do the products run or match each section layout? True, because we have 48 runs, and that's what we described at the very beginning of the product. And here's some diagnostics just for the numbers of nodes. So whether you're on a central electronics layout, meaning all the electronics and everything are central, so usually you can make more or better use of the connections and nodes and sensors, or if you are doing a split section, so split having your section spread out, so usually there'd be less effective use of nodes, not electronics, so often you'll see that number differs from the central. In our case, because it is an even number of product runs with multiples of 16, both will be the same. There is an estimate for extension harnesses if we're using a split section. So that's the amount of sensor or node-to-node extensions that we might require if we're using a split section. If we scroll down further, we'll find the metering orifice selection chart. So based on our rate 1 and our rate 2, we'll see the metering orifices available and what kind of pressures, whether it be in PSI or bar for those applications. In our example, we are doing, we might be using, this purple one, so this 0.25 gallons per minute orifice, part number being 21500-Victor025, which would give our required flow rate at 13 psi, but also too, it is kind of nice for our upper flow range as well at 29 psi. So that would be an all-around good metering orifice for our spread of rate, just changing the pressure. We scroll down, we can apply that chart into the column here. As it happens, both of our rates would be satisfied by that 21500-Victor025, so we'll plug that in. Since we are not using product 2 or product 3, we can just ignore them. We can skip over them and go to the parts list. Parts list, at the very top, you'd select your currency, whether it be Canadian dollar or US dollar. We'll be selecting Canadian dollar for our example. There's a discount factor as well, depending whether you're a distributor or a dealer. You have that means to apply any sort of discount for dealer cost or whatnot. So for our, we'll leave it at 0. You'll see now the parts list based on what we've implemented or input. We'll see the ECU base kit with one unit. The application itself for the tablet, which is not included, is free. We'd have 3 node kits, so it also has a sub description of what it includes. So node, harness, 4 times of the quad sensor cables. We scroll down, we'll see the plumbing components. So that's the general O-ring seal plumbing manifold components. We'll have 6 O-ring seal end caps. The metering orifices, so these are the EFM manifolds, so they actually have the flow meter kits on them with check valve on a flow in or 4 outlet manifold. Then we'll see the parts specific to those products. So we only have one product, so there'll only be one section here for parts specific to starter. That's what we call it. 48 runs, 48 outlets, 3 inlets for each manifold, 3 inline strainers for each manifold feed, and 48 metering orifices for one of each of those outlets. If we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see some blank spaces here. That's more if you're using alternate products or product 2 or 3. All the specific products or parts to those would be entered there. Scroll down further, that gives us our subtotal cost. We have means to put in taxes or shipping, as well as show any discount that was applicable for a dealer cost or something like that. There's also at the very bottom a parts list for separate manifolds. Similar situation, but there's a little bit more extra cost. So if we scroll down, we'll see something like the ECU splitter cost, which right off the splitter sends one sensor to the right, or one node to the right, and then one node to the left. So it's a splitter just to use more effective use of the cabling. Also, you'll notice the extension harness cables for kind of the node to node or node to ECU connections. So similar to, or on that product page, you might recall we might have needed 3 or estimated of 3. That depends on how far away those nodes or sections are located. So we might need 3 just to have on hand, just to make sure we have sufficient room. But that's there for that. And then much of the rest of the parts are the same. So you'll notice the cost is a little bit more because there's a little bit less use of, or less effective use of cabling. From then on, we can simply, if you're a dealer or if you're an end user, you can simply print off the page, and then you have a pretty solid quote as far as what kind of parts would be required, as well as give information on the pricing as well. All right. If you have any questions, by all means, contact your Wilger dealer or distributor, or even Wilger as a company itself. If you have any questions there, we can definitely give you a hand.